Nationals and Liberal MPs are warning Opposition Leader Peter Dutton against taking a 2035 emissions reduction target to the next federal election, saying it would worsen the cost of living crisis for regional and vulnerable Australians. This is on the front page of The Australian, which says most Liberals were privately opposed to a 2035 target or question the need to put a number to the Australian people. Joining me live is Deputy Opposition Leader Sussan Ley. Thanks so much for your time. So what's your view? Should climate targets be ditched?
Kenny, my view is that we will have credible and effective and, most importantly, affordable policies for all Australians by the time we get to the next election. I'm not going to jump ahead of my team, led in energy by Ted O'Brien, who's made some excellent points on this, particularly around the critical components of energy policy, that we must have security, we must have affordability and we must have sustainability. Labor has made a complete mess of this. We've got 80% of baseload power exiting the grid in the next 10 years. We've got emissions that are actually starting to go up. So what does that tell you about sustainability? And affordability, I'm sure you've opened your power bill recently and thought, my goodness, what a jump. And I hear that from households and businesses all over this country. So we as Liberals and Nationals absolutely understand that you have to get this right, and Labor has got this so wrong.
Can I just ask you though, the Liberals lost 6 seats to the Teals in blue ribbon seats, and the Teals all said during the campaign that climate change ranked as the #1 concern for voters, and all went to the election promising strong action on climate change. Are you worried about being electable if you ditch the targets, or has the politics of it changed because of the cost of living crisis since the 2022 election?
Well, we have agreed as a coalition on net zero by 2050. We took that into the election under the previous government. We still maintain that policy. So we are committed to a renewable energy transition. And I understand as a rural MP how important rural Australia is in that and the role it can play. But no one in Labor understands the disaster that this is causing to all of Australia under their policies. We saw Kwinana Alcoa refinery announce its closure yesterday. That's 1,000 jobs. And, you know, ironically, aluminium and alumina are vital to the renewable energy economy. We're not going to be a country that makes things anymore if we head in this direction under Labor. And central to that is energy policy. So unless we get the fundamentals right, you know, targets and international agreements, fine, but we have to get those fundamentals right, and we have to recognise the effect this disastrous Labor policy is having on all Australian households and manufacturers. We've got investment exiting the grid. Labor has always demonised gas, an important transition fuel to get to the renewable energy economy. They've got that all wrong. So unfortunately, unless they focus on that, and yes, cost of living is vital, because that's something that every single Australian is worried about, particularly as the new year turns over and they've got to afford all those new costs going back to school and back to work.
Yeah, it certainly is expensive at the moment. Well, the nation's supermarket giants have all been warned that all options are on the table, including government intervention to bring grocery prices down as the Albanese government makes cost of living relief its central policy goal ahead of the next election. The Prime Minister will today announce former Labor Cabinet Minister Craig Emerson will lead the review of the Food and Grocery Code of Conduct. Do you welcome this announcement and the focus on this by the government?
Well, it's taken 100 days to appoint Mr Emerson, a previous Labor Member of Parliament, and it's a review of a code. I don't think, as I said, as families are pushing their supermarket trolleys around, filling up for the new year, wondering about those back-to-school prices, costs, and everything is going up around them, they're going to be reassured by a review of a code of conduct. This is all about bringing prices down, not reviewing what supermarkets are doing. Sure, that's an important part of the overall mix, but I tell you one thing Labor could have done, and that is not smash my farmers in the Murray-Darling Basin by taking water away from them in a ridiculous announcement by the Environment Minister that actually doesn't recognise that you need water to grow food. So we're going to see less Australian-grown produce on our supermarket shelves, and I wonder how much that is going to put up prices, given given the ridiculous policy. So if you look at policies on water, policies on industrial relations, which are looming, which of course are going to push up the cost of doing business for every single farm, household, value-added agriculture business and supermarkets, the cost of doing business under these industrial relations changes is going to go up. And you look at the energy policy that I just spoke of. These are the things the government should be focusing in, not a review by someone they've appointed 100 days after the due date.
OK, we'll be talking to a cattle farmer later in the program on this. Sussan Ley, thanks so much for joining us. Talk soon.